So the Packers' final preseason game is now officially in the books, which means the next time we see the Packers, it will be in week 1 against the Chicago Bears. And so now we've had an entire preseason of Jordan Love. And if we look specifically at this game, I already made a video on this if you guys watched my Jordan Love video breaking down his performance, but I'll touch on it a little bit more in this video. But I really liked what we saw from him today, especially when it came to his rushing ability. There were a few different times where he had to scramble out of the pocket. Either the offensive line was breaking down a little bit, couldn't find a guy open, scrambles out of the pocket, and you could just see his athletic ability, his ability to escape, his ability to keep the play alive, run for first downs. If we look at his total rushing yards, I think he had a total of 3 rushing attempts for 21 yards. 2 of those were for first downs. Another one was a nice solid run. We saw him do it another preseason game as well. And that's one thing we just haven't seen a ton of from him so far, just because he hasn't had that many drives. And most of the time he sits back there, progresses through his reads, and it's not his tendency to escape the pocket immediately when he doesn't, find his first or second read. But today we saw, when he needs to escape, he definitely can do it, and he can do it at a very high level. There are a few plays where I was shocked as to how athletic he is and how gifted he is in that area. And so that's nice to see. For years and years, we had Aaron Rodgers here. He used to be able to do things sort of like that early in his career. Of course, now reaching 40 years old, around that age, Rodgers for the past few seasons didn't really do much of that. He occasionally did, but to have a guy like Love, who's 24 years old, I believe, if not 25 or almost 25, he clearly has that ability. So that was nice to see, and I think that entering the season now, I really do trust his legs, and so I want to see him run more, because when he does, he's dangerous, and that was very exciting to see. He finished 9 for 15, 63 yards, and a beautiful touchdown to Christian Watson, back shoulder in the end zone from the 5 or 6 yard line, and I think we're going to see more and more of that once this season gets going. It was sort of similar to the past few preseason games where the first or second drive took some time for the Packers offense to get going. There were some penalties this game, some false starts on the first drive. And one thing, too, even when things aren't going well for this offense in this preseason, it's not like Love is just making absolutely terrible decisions and forcing the ball where he should not. I'd say most of the decisions he makes, they aren't super bad in the way of, putting it into a position where, a defender is going to clearly intercept the ball. Most times he gives his guy a chance to go and get it, and even if it's not perfect, he's not out there making bad decisions consistently. And I think early in his career, and there were some preseason games where he sort of just chunked it up, and I think we see less of that now, and I think we see that he is very wise when it comes to the throws he makes, and he finished the final drive 7 for 10 really nicely. And so another performance from Jordan Love where I came away excited about what we saw. And so that was just another great performance by Love. Sean Clifford, another somewhat solid day, continues to not be afraid when he's back there in the pocket. 8 for 12, 46 yards. He exited with an injury, but I think he should be okay. So solid backup there. And then if we look at the rest of this game, I think for the first few preseason games, there are a few different guys who consistently stood out. Malik Heath, where today I think he stood out once again. He actually started alongside Christian Watson because Romeo Doubs was out with a hamstring injury. Hopefully that's not too serious. Malik Heath, 4 receptions, 35 yards. I think he has locked himself into this Packers roster as the 6th wide receiver. A few other guys who had a nice day. Carrington Valentine, who played really, really well that first preseason game, almost had a pick 6, jumped the route, sort of slipped through his hands, but I think he is going to be a beast for the Packers. And I bet you one day he's starting here in Green Bay. Maybe the next few seasons he becomes a starter if one day the Packers have to move on from Rasul Douglas and in a few seasons. I think that Carrington Valentine could be a solid corner here for years and years to come. TJ Slayton had a really nice play early in the game. Nice run stop, and I think it's going to be exciting to see what he can do alongside Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt once the season gets going. Another guy who really had a ton of nice plays, Isaiah McDuffie, middle linebacker, a few really, really nice plays against the run. He's a guy who for years, especially against the run, has really caught my eye. He's very aggressive, typically good at reading, what's going on in the play. There was one play today where he definitely misjudged it, which led to a big run, but he had a few really nice plays. Kenny Clark was actually playing today to start the game, and he was causing massive issues for that Seahawks offensive line, consistently pushing his guy back, making nice plays, which is awesome to see him back out there. And then a few other little notes. Brenton Cox had a few nice plays against the run. He's a guy who I think is vying for one of those edge rusher spots. I don't think he's going to get it. I do think Justin Hollins could outwork him and get that final spot, but he has showed some nice plays. Tariq Carpenter had a nice run stop, and I think he's going to make the roster because of his special teams ability. And then Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden, 4th and 6th round draft picks. Wooden in the 4th, Brooks in the 6th. 2 defensive linemen who game after game are making plays in the backfield. So the Packers have very, very solid depth on the interior of that defensive line. And then to end it off here, we have Anders Carlson, who had a very nice day. He goes 2 for 2 on his field goals. One was a 57-yarder, and I think that's why the Packers are really hoping they can get him to, find that consistency, consistent accuracy, because he has a massive leg. It was a 57-yard field goal, and he didn't just barely make it. He probably had another 5 to 10 yards on that kick, so he could have made a 62 to 67 yarder. And so if he can figure out that accuracy, which he did pretty good today, he went 2 for 2, 1 for 1 on the extra points. Actually, I think it was 1 for 2, but ESPN says it was 1 for 2. He had 1 extra point blocked, so I don't think that was his fault. But a nice day for Carlson, ended the day with a nice PAT. And so if he can get that consistency and accuracy figured out, the Packers have a kicker who can boot it. So that's what you want to have in a kicker who's young, still has all that leg power, and that's why I think the Packers want to get this to work out, just because if he does work out, here's a young guy who they can rely on, similarly to how they relied on Mason Crosby for 15 years or so. I think they're hoping that's what Anders Carlson can be, so they're willing to be a little bit patient, and it may pay off. So we'll see if this continues as the season starts next week. But those are some of the biggest takeaways. There are a few other guys who were competing here for final roster spots. 2 who were competing, Pat O'Donnell and Daniel Whelan at punter. Whelan's looking really good. I actually think he's going to be the punter here. I think if you look at his average today, actually 62.5 yards. Pat O'Donnell's 49.5. But those are my biggest takeaways from the game. If you have any, feel free to comment them down below. Any guys who caught your eye. I'll finish here actually running back. Emmanuel Wilson had the most carries. 17 carries, 49 yards, 2.9 yards per carry. Not amazing, but he still had some nice plays. They gave Nate McCreary a good amount of carries, 7 carries, 24 yards. Patrick Taylor, 6 carries, 24 yards. So there is that big question about the third running back. And I still wonder if the Packers will keep 3, just because last year they didn't. Decided to keep Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, and then elevated Patrick Taylor from the practice squad last season. I also wonder about Lou Nichols III, who was a 7th round draft pick, has been out with injury. But considering, we don't really know the extent of that shoulder injury, I don't know if he's going to be out a while. I don't know if they'll start him on the IR or the PUP list when the season starts. But if he's almost ready to come back, I wouldn't be shocked if the Packers just said, we're putting Lou Nichols as a 3rd running back, because he was a draft pick. I wouldn't be shocked to see that happen. And then if he doesn't work out, or the Packers want to bring someone else up, they can elevate Patrick Taylor. So we'll watch there and see what happens there. But those are my biggest takeaways. If you want to stay up to date with all Packers news, feel free to subscribe. That's out for this one, and I'll see you guys next time.